Today on Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond.
Forcefulness is something that I really try to focus on, in whether it's a keynote or a one-on-one coaching, is always pointing people back to the real guru, the real expert in the room, which is the person that's hearing the message, not the guy that's delivering it.
It's time to take an inside look at those that are taking their lives, their businesses, and their passions to the next level. Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Thrive Loud, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond. I'm kind of excited about today's show because we have a man who has created multi-million-dollar revenue streams for companies on 4 continents with innovative new strategies on leadership and communication, or leadership communication, to be specific. As the U.S. National Elevator Pitch Champion, he's helped clients to land on Shark Tank, Dragon's Den, and Shark Tank Australia. He's an amazing and inspiring speaker, and although he's from Houston, Texas, he knows the best coffee places in the East Village of New York City. Thrive Loud listeners, Chris Westfall. Chris, how are you today?
Oh, I'm great, Lou. I'm trying to figure out how I can live up to that introduction, but thank you for those kind words.
So what most people don't know is other speakers tend to crisscross paths in all different forms of locations, and all you need to do is overlap a little bit and you're going to have a fun day of magic. And I had a great chance, you could tell, to have some coffee when Chris was in New York. And he's a rock star, as you heard in his opening. And he also has a really good story, but also a great message that he continues to deliver. So what I want to do, Chris, is have the Thrive Loud community get a real feel for what you've been focusing on most recently. Because I love getting that off the tip of your tongue, because I know that's what you've been in the zone of doing right now.
The big thing that is showing up for me, Lou, is that it seems that everybody has a story that they want to share, a vision that they want to get out there to the world. And I'm fortunate, like you, that I get to speak to groups and share my stories, but it's always pointing people towards the opportunity, not just to tell a story, but to bring their story to life, to create a message around a kind of leadership communication that's compelling, that's not just about relaying information or doing a data dump, but about creating a real and authentic connection. And whether that connection happens online or in person, making sure that when people meet you, that they don't say, I liked your avatar better.
So that's a great point. Okay, so how do I live up to maybe what my brand or what other things say about me? Because, by the way, we can make our avatars, our online presence, our brands pretty strong. How can you help leaders stay on top of that game so they can be the best connectors they can be when they do meet these people?
Well, when you say being on top of your game, that's really how I think about leadership. I think about it like a game. And here's the way that I look at it. It's like this. If I know all of the history and rules of boxing, that isn't going to necessarily help me when I'm about to get punched in the face. and where I'm going with this, Lou, is that leadership, to me, it's a contact sport, and communication is as well. And it's useful to, learn and study and that kind of thing. But once you've gained information, the thing that's really valuable is to get in the ring, to get in the game, and to take the kind of action that's going to help you. And one of the things that I've realized is that, for my clients, when they say, how can I communicate more effectively? How can I be more of a leader? How can I be a better coach, or whatever it is that we're talking about? The way to be better at anything isn't to study it or to reflect on it. It's to start doing it.
Yeah.
And certainly you need some information and you need some background. And I'm not saying, just give up on skills training and drop out of school. But I am saying you have to get in the game, get in the ring, because leadership especially, it's a contact sport.
I'm just laughing because you danced around, maybe pun intended, the ring with one of my favorite quotes from Mike Tyson. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Very true. And I think you cleaned that up. I think he had some more adjectives in there, Lou.
He did. I definitely gave the PG version and avoided any lisps to try to sound like Mike. But
outstanding.
But what I will say is share a story with the listeners, maybe where you've run into a situation where one of your clients or a story that you've dealt with in your past where that's happened, maybe where they needed to bring Chris Westfall in because they were having a problem making their leadership communication work well. Anything that comes to mind of a specific instance that you should think of?
I was working with a publicly traded finance company. They do consumer finance, so credit cards, credit related things. I was working with a team of their vice presidents, and one vice president stood up and he said, "Listen, I've got a huge problem. I go in and I prepare this detailed presentation that I have to present it to government regulators because it's banking and it's heavily regulated. And I go in and I present these ideas to government regulators. I get to the third slide and they stop me and they start peppering me with questions, and I can't get through my presentation, and it's extremely frustrating. And I end up getting angry, and I end up having a very bad presentation, and I don't get my points across. What can I do?" And I said, "That is a big challenge." And we took a look at the situation and the circumstances. And what showed up for this guy in the course of our conversation was he said, what if instead of this being a presentation, it's a conversation? What if when they ask me questions, they're not trying to throw sticks in my spokes or bust my chops? They're simply trying to point me towards the information that they need. And it may not be on slide 47. They may need something different. And when he lost that attachment to slide 47 and lost the attachment to, this is a presentation and I have to follow it exactly, everything changed. Yeah. There's one of my favorite Yiddish proverbs is "Man plans, God laughs." And I swear to God, that is so true. And it's useful to have a plan. It's great that you got 47 slides and you've worked on them so hard. But when you're giving a presentation of any kind, there's always two presentations. There's the one that you give, and then there's the one that the audience hears. Which one do you think is most important?
Well said. I like that. It's connecting with what your audience wants to hear. I love it. There's two other people that come to mind. We spoke about one of them the last time we met, who've both been on Thrive Loud, and both have a lot of different theories about pitching. One, Brant Pinvidic, who you and I both know, who's based out in California, and has a general concept that you've got 3 minutes to deliver your entire message, and if you don't do it, and that's from his experience in television and having heard many shows pitched to him. And then there's Oren Clef, who wrote the Pitch Anything book. And he's now doing a whole thing about flip the script. But he had a whole way about figuring out pitches. As the pitch champion from years ago, and obviously someone who's helped people on Shark Tank, I want to get your key thing. I like that whole part about the audience, that you got to make sure that's the one they want to hear. How do you work with your clients, or how do you think about re-messaging people so their message connects in that position?
Well, first of all, I want to say, huge fan of Brant Pinvidic, great guy. Big shout out to Brant. He wrote the foreword to my book, Leadership Language, and Brant has been just a friend and a colleague and a mentor. And I love his message around the 3-minute rule. And the thing that I would say that might add to what Brant has shared, and also what Oren has said, is that this idea of focusing on your audience in new and more powerful ways is the key to crafting your pitch. And when I work with entrepreneurs who are trying to pitch their business ideas, the first question that we address is what is it that's really top of mind for investors? In other words, what does an investor really want? And typically the first thing that shows up is, well, they want money. Right. And if that's true, then, you really should focus on the money and the facts and the figures and your pro forma and stuff like that. But here's the thing, Lou, you and I both know that what we project in year number 3 is a lie. I mean, it's either too high or it's too low. I mean, nobody can predict exactly. But so the other thing that shows up for me when it looks like what do investors want is that there's one characteristic that all investors share, or one thing that's common to every investor that I've ever met, and it's this: they all have one thing in common. They all have money. They already have it. So recognizing that real estate or the stock market is a much safer investment than an entrepreneurial venture. Maybe the reason they're at the table and talking to you isn't because they think you're a sure bet. And when you look past the idea of money, I'm not saying the money is not important. I would never say that. But maybe there's something more important in the pitch. And that's where my work focuses, is on helping people to connect with the human element, the authentic human element that looks beyond money, so that you create the most powerful thing that you can do in any pitch, in any conversation, in any meeting, whether it's in Hollywood, California, or Hollywood, Florida. It's connection. And focusing on that connection in new and more powerful ways has been the way that I've helped my clients to raise over $100 million in capital and coach people onto the shows that you mentioned, as well as to victory at, places like the Rice Business Plan competition, which is the largest competition of its kind in the world. And I helped a team of scientists to win that. I'm very proud of those results. But those results, they don't come from my magic voodoo, Lou. they come from connection and the ability to help people connect with investors in new ways.
Which is why we get along so well, master connector yourself that you are. So, Chris, I love asking these questions. Is there one before and after situation that you helped out where somebody's pitch was in a complete mess, and after the work you would work with them, it had completely transformed and came out in a unique way? Obviously, there's many of them, but is there one that sticks out that you can share with our listeners?
Yeah, I had a doctor come to me, and he had developed a new medical device that he had been out in the market talking about for 8 years. And all he had been able to do was to create some arguments around the science behind his invention. And so what it was, Lou, without going into a lot of details, was a blood filtration device that fights a disease called sepsis, which is a natural occurrence in our bodies in response to any kind of traumatic event. It's our body's way of fighting disease or trauma in our bodies, and it can actually cause poisoning of the blood, and your organs can shut down. And in fact, if you go into an emergency room in the United States, you have a better chance of dying from sepsis than anything else that might have caused you to go into the emergency room. So sepsis is a big problem. And this guy had this scientific pitch that was, it was dense and difficult, and even the medical community was struggling to get their brain around it. And I'm not a doctor, so I said,
play one on TV.
Yeah, thank you. I do, absolutely. But I said we've got to simplify this. So this is what changed in his pitch, and I'll just start it off for you. He stepped on stage and said, "A thin white male in his early 50s in reasonably good health presented at a New York hospital with signs of a chest cold and possibly pneumonia. 4 days later, Jim Henson, the creator of the Muppets, was dead."
I remember that.
Yeah, and it wasn't pneumonia that got him; it was sepsis. And here I am with a scientist saying, a story about Miss Piggy would really be important right now. He was like, "What?" But and I know this. This is true for you too. That's what you do, is you help your clients look at what they haven't seen.
Yes.
And when he saw that this place of connection, because Jim Henson is someone that everyone can relate to, whether you are a brain surgeon or a janitor, everybody knows the Muppets. And from this point of connection, the story flowed, and people were more open to the science and seeing the thing that I think is so critical in a pitch, and that's impact. What's the impact of your solution, your team, your innovation? And that was what we were able to bring forward. So it was a real change from picking a fight with the scientific community to talking about the Muppets, and it actually got him more traction. So and it all worked out. Oh, and the way that the story ends is that he actually ended up getting financing. He sold an order to the U.S. government, and so he financed the business out of cash flows, and that's what got him going.
That is
a great story. Mm-hmm.
When Chris Westfall is pitching his services, how does he lead off his communication?
One of the things that I've learned is that every client that I speak with is always interested in the same thing, and they're always focused on the same thing, and that is themselves. So what I try to do is I kind of touch and go on what it is that I did for my client in New Orleans or Los Angeles. And I really step into their world as best as I can. Right. Because any change that's going to happen, I'd like to think that it comes from my magic words, but truly where it comes from is from inside of them, and pointing people towards their own resourcefulness is something that I really try to focus on, in whether it's a keynote or a one-on-one coaching, is always pointing people back to the real guru, the real expert in the room, which is the person that's hearing the message, not the guy that's delivering it.
You would have loved where I just was, Chris. And we'll date this as it was. This was in mid-September of 2019. I attended the New Media Summit based in San Diego. Phenomenal event. And there's a lot of icons of influence from all different realms, authors, speakers, and a lot of podcasters. And many of the participants in this particular conference were there to pitch, to come on to these great shows. And by the way, some of these people are fascinating, amazing, and incredible. And there was over almost 200 people, participants in this. And they almost did it like The Voice, where you would pitch your services on why you should come onto someone's show. And there wasn't always a match, but talk about an effective, you had 2 minutes to get your pitch across. And I would tell you that the most well-received, not only the people that were on stage, we rotated who would be, kind of in the chairs, like the judges. I never got to be Adam Levine, though, which I'm kind of bummed about. But anyway, that's not important right now. What I will say, I got to be up there, and you get to select. But also when you're in the audience listening, you would also write these people down to potentially on your shows. That opening line probably got more lights or chairs turned than anything else. That, just like that sentence you just said with Jim Henson, something like of that feature, because somebody connected on a level that you knew would connect us to your soul. And I recognize how important that is, not just in a pitch in that regard, but a pitch to anything. Yeah. Because I think what people forget about so much is, like, if you make it about the client or a third party and get away from yourself, get out of your own head, you're going to relate to many more people, because, like you said, you can't relate. Not everyone can relate to you. And it's such an important message that you've brought that home. It just hit full circle after having gone through that, doesn't it?
That sounds great. Yeah. I mean, in my experience, when I get out of my own way is when I'm really at my best. And that's true for my clients too. Wow. That's great that you had a chance to hear those pitches and be
I'm holding the book just right now, and I'm not alone with lots of podcasters. There's a lot of people coming on Thrive Loud, listeners, and they're amazing. You can't wait. I can't even begin to tell you the quality of what was in there. So it's really great. So superstars coming ahead. But we're on with a superstar right now, Chris Westfall. And I want to dig into you a little bit here and kind of understand a little how you tick. I'm going to start off with one of the questions I love asking Chris, because I'm curious. You're an amazing speaker. You're incredible with your clients. You do great stuff every day. You're a super guy across the board, and you're damn good looking, which is, they'll see in the artwork here, listeners. God, if this was only video. But anyway, on those days that you're not firing in all cylinders and you're having trouble thriving, who or what practice do you seek to get yourself back on the thriving track?
This is an easy one to answer, because I've had this day today. I have a client that I'm working with that has been especially difficult for me, and I'll spare you all the details of that. But I was really lost in a place that kind of describes always the dark place, and always when my days are hard, it's like this. I was lost in my own thinking. And when my thoughts get in my way and cloud my vision, in other words, and I'm talking about the thoughts that are commentary thoughts, kind of that this isn't going well, she's not understanding you, why won't she take your advice, those kinds of things, and pointing that commentary towards myself. There's a story that I create that I get attached to, and this is kind of interesting because I help people with their stories, but sometimes the greatest story is the one that you leave behind. And when I let go of my story about how my client was having difficulty, and that was all about me. When I saw that wasn't true, and that I didn't need to believe in that I didn't need to cling to that I didn't need to, turn that thought into reality and beat myself up with it, something really powerful showed up. And I want to share it with you, and I'll share it with the listeners too. And it's this idea that just because a train of thought shows up doesn't mean you have to ride that train. And that for me has been the biggest lesson that I've learned, is that when I'm lost in my own thought, the way to find my way back is to drop that thinking, not try to control it, not try to get into some mindset or mantra, but to just recognize thinking for what it is. It's just a thought. And if I choose to punish myself with it, well, that's kind of my choice, isn't it? And I can make a different one. And when I do better.
Love that. That is solid. Let's do the admin part of the show, because I don't want to forget it, because I got so many more things to cover. Share with the listeners, if you could, all the places people can find Chris Westfall, websites, social media, all that stuff. We'll put it in the show notes. Always sounds better when they hear it from you.
Very cool. First place to look at my stuff would be on my website, and that is westfallonline.com. My last name is like the direction and the season, westfallonline.com. You can also find me on your favorite social media platform, and my handle on Instagram and Twitter is Westfall Online. You can also find me on Facebook at The Real Chris Westfall. And also want to invite you to check out my YouTube channel, which is, wait for it, Westfall Online. You can find a number of different videos there on effective communication, how to find confidence in difficult circumstances, and a number of other resources that I've created. So that's where you can find me online.
I'm going to go back to this because I realized I didn't pick up the second half of where I wanted to go on this question. Chris, the worst pitch you ever saw or heard?
That's like saying, which is your favorite kiss? There have been so many.
That's awesome. You could pick one of the many. How about that?
Yeah, I had a guy. We were working on how to begin your pitch, and he stood up after quite a bit of work, and I said, "Okay, it's time to hear your pitch. Let's hear it." And he stood up and he said, "I'm 9 shades of awesome. Which color do you want first?"
Winner, chicken dinner right there. Oh, that is spectacular.
Stop.
Mic drop. Oh my God.
Yeah. So
what shade? Oh, incredible. That's how we may open this show. Anyway. All right. So I do want to get down this avenue because we're going to have a conversation here. Five Loud listeners know I love to ask our guests what their all-time favorite movie is. Please share with the listeners your all-time favorite movie.
My all-time favorite movie is Shakespeare in Love.
And why do you connect with that film?
Well, Lou, it's an interesting story. I met my wife starring opposite her in a show, and I used to work in the performing arts quite a bit. And so a movie about a couple falling in love on stage, it hits me right where I live, literally. And with the woman that I live with, it's just a story that has always touched me. And I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but I think it's just fantastic. And the love story, it's timeless. It's beautiful. It won the Academy Award for a reason. And it's always my favorite film.
That's great. I want to get 2 points to that. One, my favorite line from that movie is, "The show must go on."
Go on. Yes.
There's about 7 of them in the movie where you have to almost navigate through the dialogue to know that they're referring to something that's really famous. That's part of without a doubt, it was the best screenplay of that year. My biggest issue with that movie and the award is not that it was Best Picture in that year. You could pick it up and drop it in any other year and it deserved to be Best Picture. It's the year that and the movie that it trumped was Saving Private Ryan. And it's still shocking. And that was a whole big, movement towards the independent film. We won't talk about who the executive producer of this that show was at this particular point in time.
We shall not speak his name. Yes.
Yes, we shall not say his name, that douchebag. But anyway, so the thing that I have, and that is one of the things that they have with the issue is that how could that have been the Best Picture in a year that there was Saving Private Ryan? That's the only thing. You could pick it up and move it any other year. So I always have a little bit of I can't believe that what is an unbelievable epic didn't get that honor. And I don't think anybody would have ever said it, but that's what most people know, even though it is a great movie. And you could have picked it up and moved it the year before, the year after, any other year, and it would have been Best Picture. So just incredible incredible story on my own personal part of that.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, the Academy tries to, they seem to try to vote for things for Best Picture that are as timeless as they can be. And you go Shakespeare versus World War II, which is more. I don't know.
And it's
I don't know.
It was one of those, it's one of those that I always say that you can go back, with those things age well, go watch, it is really well done. However, it's some of that quote that we just went through was just spectacular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other one that I love is, they always come up and they're because it's always about putting on the show and how is the show going to come to life. And the one and they go, that they keep asking over and over is, how is this going to come together? And the answer is, it's a mystery. And he keeps saying it's a mystery.
Yes.
And I swear to God, that is my life. It's a mystery how it all comes together sometimes, but when it does, it's a fantastic thing. I don't know. There were a lot of themes in that movie, and I've had the opportunity to go to the Old Globe and see shows there in Shakespeare's Globe, which of course has been rebuilt and is in London, and is a fantastic place to see a show. If that's your thing and you enjoy that, I certainly do. And so that movie is always going to be something special.
And I love the personal connection you have there with your wife. That's a great part. You're about to go on the stage. They're calling you up. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's the music you play all the time, but does Chris Westfall have a jam, that beat that's kind of like the rhythm of his life? Think, Saturday Night Fever and John Travolta walking down the street, exactly the music that would be playing there.
The sound that I really enjoy that gets me going is Fitz and the Tantrums. I don't know if that's if you tune into those guys from LA, but Fitz and the Tantrums, 6 a.m., that kind of thing.
Nice.
That gets me going. That gets me moving. Yeah.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. My producers will like it too, because it's playing underneath us right now as we're speaking. So
outstanding. You have excellent taste.
We absolutely, man, are they
that
good?
Sound.
I'll tell you. Chris Westfall, what's next? What's the big thing coming up in the end of 2019, going into 2020? What are you looking forward to? Big projects on the board for you?
I've got a bunch of speaking things on the books, and I'm working with clients that range from major universities to corporate clients in energy and oil and gas and technology. I'm going to be coaching entrepreneurs to help them to go out and raise capital in a number of different areas. And I'm also doing a lot of career coaching. And surprisingly, Lou, I'm working with a number of folks who are from India. They're either there now or they're from India and they're here in the United States. And there seems to be so much innovation that is coming, not just, of course, from Asia, but especially from India as this there's like a cultural initiative towards innovation, and it's really, really powerful and exciting. And so I have a number of clients that I'm working with to help bring that innovation to life. So coaching, speaking, and of course, I forgot to mention it before, but I'm writing all the time for Forbes.
Yes.
So if you drop my names into a search in Forbes, you'll find my latest articles. I focus on careers and leadership and how effective communication can make an impact in both of those areas for you.
Chris Westfall, truly a pleasure to have you, my brother, here on Thrive Loud.
Lou, it is your world, and I am just happy to live in it for a while. Thank you for having me. You are the best. I admire so much what you're doing and the guests that you've had on here, and the way that look, the reason people tune into this show is because they know your heart, and it comes across. It comes across in the conversations, and when we met in the village, and we had a chance to have a cup of coffee, and I see it here now. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the heart that you put into this show. Thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Truly, right back at you, man. Pounding my heart here right for you. Thank you so much for coming on the program. And to all our Thrive Loud listeners out there, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep thriving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. And follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Thrive Loud. Or find us on the web at thriveloud.com.